Power Up Summit. It's day 2 of our marvelous extravaganza of Power Up over the course of this week. So, in case you don't know me, my name is Cameron. I am the undergraduate program manager. I'm going to be emceeing today. So today we've got a very exciting session lined up. We've got the wonderful David Pointing in to speak. So we'll get more into who David is and a bit more about his speaking topics a little bit later on. But yeah, that is who will be speaking with us, today. And finally, with us here today, the person who will be speaking today is David Pointing. So Dr. David Pointing is our CEO. So he is chief in charge. He has the challenging job of managing all 6 of us, which can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. But David is head of the ship, leading the way. Amazing. I think you're just on mute there, David.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, world's slowest standing there. So hello, everyone, and thank you, Cam and team. So I get the delight today of being the guest and being a speaker. So as Cam said, we're gonna cover 3 things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career, and hopefully you'll find it interesting, but I want more for you to be inspired to think about how a similar type of journey in its infinite variety, how that could apply to your life and career. Then, as I am now an executive and I work with a lot of executives, share a bit of an insight on what the future could look like for you and what that might mean for you today as a person at the start of your career, and then bringing it all together. So Cam, I can drive from my side if you.
Oh yeah,
I'll share it from my side and drive that if that's all right. So
all good. I've just jumped off now. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I just want to give you a bit of a rundown of my career. So I'm a materials engineer by background. I grew up in Sydney and I went to UNSW. And my interest was really about sustainability and clean energy. And keep in mind that we're talking about almost 30 years ago. So, quite a while ago, before solar panels were a world-leading resource that Australia has. So very early, we were looking at how do we make better solar panels? How do we get them out there? So early in my career, I was really working passionately in that clean energy space. And as I'll show you in a moment, I've gone on from there. But these 2 photos that you've got up on the screen, they really, for me, they show my 2 passions. One is clean energy in communities, also in interesting parts of the world and in cold parts of the world. I like cold places for some reason. But the second photo, which is me now, is the other passion, which is working with our profession, helping share knowledge, helping build capability, and helping develop the careers of people, particularly young people. And I wouldn't have thought at the start of my career that that's what my career would look like. So there's lots of things that you can do in life, and they say these days that you'll have 6, 7 quite distinctly different careers in your life. So I'm going to talk a little bit how I've done that, but also how each stage in your career really gives you a lot of value in that part of your life, but also gives you some building blocks that you never quite know where they might take you moving forward, and what other joy and reward and money and income and great things you'll get out of life from how you approach it. So let me tell you my story. So as I said, I grew up in Sydney and I now live in Tasmania, or Lutruwita in Tasmania. So I started really quite focused on science and materials engineering and how to make better solar panels that turn sunlight into electricity. But I very quickly learned through that process that we had some pretty good nerds making pretty good solar panels. And the real challenge was not the design of the technology, it was actually the implementation, the rollout, the getting into communities. And I was able to think about, where does my natural skill sets, where does my interest sit, even in all of the opportunity? I started to think then about, okay, it's about communication skills and it's about helping people understand the technology and integrate it into their way of life. So being really passionate about renewable energy, I was also looking for a job. And so, first pivot in my life was going from what I was passionate about to working in the Middle East drilling oil wells. And you might think, okay, that's quite a change of what he said he was passionate about. But in reality, it was a wonderful development opportunity that taught me a whole bunch of really practical skills of, going out to remote environments with a team to deliver a service to a customer or to a community. It was very, very, very high tech stuff that we were working with in very multicultural teams and traveling all around the world. So, my sort of first bit of advice is really be open to lots of opportunities at the start of your career, because you don't know what it will build in terms of your capability. The other great thing that it did for me was help me really think, what do I want to do with myself and my career? And I did go, hey, I am passionate about clean energy, and I'm also passionate about cold places, particularly Antarctica, for some reason. So I did a total pivot and literally got on a helicopter and flew out of the desert and flew home to Australia and moved down to Tasmania to do a degree at the University of Tasmania. And it was a one-year degree, and part of it was about how do we run Australia's Antarctic stations and the engineering behind that. And obviously we need to use energy and electricity to do that. So I then took a value that I think I recommend for you strongly, which is be curious and ask questions and just go and see what you can find out. So I went to the Australian government's Antarctic division and said, hey, look, I'm here for a year doing a project at uni. I need an engineering project to work on. I'm keen about energy. What have you got? And they gave me a challenge that then took up 8 years of my life and became a PhD, which was how do we run one of our Antarctic research stations on wind energy and stored electricity in batteries, hydrogen energy, etc. So that became my passion, my project. And I went down to Antarctica and I became one of the world experts on how we run remote area power systems in cold climates. But how do we run remote area power systems purely off clean energy technology? And how would you do that? And would you do that? Short answer is, in a station like this, Mawson Station in Antarctica, you're not going to run it on 100% renewable energy. You're always going to need diesel for backup and safety and security. But there were a lot of lessons that came out of that. And in fact, the information that we developed was of interest to other parts of the world that really do have lots of communities, lots of normal people living in cold places. So I looked from the bottom of the earth to the top of the earth and ended up moving to Scandinavia, to Europe and the Arctic. So, lots of people live in cold places, and my expertise was in demand, not just the technical part, but the how do we do it type of thing. But on the way, remembering that I was passionate about communities and clean energy, I actually stopped off in Cambodia for 6 months to do a project with Engineers Without Borders that was, very focused on a local community. And I'll show you some photos in a second. And then heading across to Greenland, Sweden, Norway, working with isolated communities up there. So not nearly as high tech as wind and hydrogen energy systems in Antarctica, but very much about communities and helping communities. In Cambodia, it was really quite low tech. It was about real fundamentals of life, like how do we have resilient but not powered by electricity pumps based on a bike wheel to pump water out of the ground. And then the other issue was, there's very little street lighting or any lighting around. So kids couldn't do their homework because it's dark at night. So how could we roll out low cost renewable energy systems, solar panels, solar lighting, so that kids and communities could have some lighting? So that was really interesting, because it was about, you're talking budgets of $2-3 a day and very low capability, yet serving a really important issue in a community. And so that for me became part of this theme of my career, which is about the people are so important for what we do as engineers and technical professionals. And that continued to sort of my main last really technical thing that I've done in my career, which was 4 years living in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and working with communities all around Scandinavia. Again, small communities, low income communities, not a lot of infrastructure, and helping them to come up with strategies and practical ways that they could reduce their energy demand, better manage it, and diversify how their community runs instead of being dependent on fossil fuels. So for me, that was, quite not a journey that I imagined I would be doing, but all along the way, there were things that I was consistently doing when I reflect back, and I'll talk about those in a bit. Uh, but what happened to me in Denmark was my wife from Tasmania. We had children. We had some challenges with having children, and we ended up, for a number of different reasons, we totally pivoted and moved back to Australia and back to Tasmania, and that's where I made a really big career shift, part by necessity. The Australian government at the time was shutting down lots of renewable energy type projects, so everything I'd done in my career to that stage was not directly transferable. So I switched to quite a different area, which was working in Engineers Australia, the professional body for engineers, working as a business development manager, meaning, trying to help businesses and individuals like you and I understand what a professional body like Engineers Australia does, and helping people make use of the services that Engineers Australia offers. And then that evolved into me actually running some business units focused on either, universities and undergraduates or graduates, or also running the services in Tasmania. So I moved from being a really technical engineer to a community service focused engineer to what I am sort of today, which is an engineering executive who runs businesses and programs focused around engineering services and engineering people. So quite a change for me, but also something that I enjoyed all along. And so now, now at this stage of my career, I do a lot of talking with a lot of people, but I still use some of those same fundamental engineering skills that I used as I was working in the Middle East, as I was working in Antarctica, as I was working with communities in Cambodia and Greenland, still using a lot of those skills. But I've also had to grow and develop a whole bunch of new skills as I go through my journey. So that's me in a nutshell. So yeah, back to you, Cam.
So love it. Yeah. So for today, just I pretty interested, David, in looking into the skills that our participants in the Power Up program can use to build their future careers. So I just want to know some of the skills and strategies that you've picked up across your sort of long career between working in the Middle East to Tassie and Scandinavia and Antarctica. What skills have you picked up along the way that you have found that have been useful and that you're still using to this day?
Yeah, sure, Cam. So as I've popped up on the screen there, I thought about trying to pull out some common threads and reflections, and you've got them up there, but I'll talk through them. So first was, be curious and follow your passions and interests. So we get this a lot from, or we hear this a lot from managers of students who come and do work placements over the summer, is this sense of like, oh, I wish they'd asked more questions, you the students. We know that you've got questions, but you're being a bit shy and timid about asking. And so I urge you to really, overcome any shyness that you have and really be curious and ask questions. And that will help you learn a lot, but also really work out what really interests you, because there's so many different opportunities and ideas out there. So yeah, be curious and then take that a step further and really seek opportunities. You don't have to take all the opportunities, but you certainly want to discover what opportunities there are. My career has been quite a strange, varied career. I didn't plot and plan that. And most of it was from opportunities that came up from throwing myself into what I was doing with a passion, but being curious and really looking for, hey, what else is around? Doesn't mean I wanted to leave something that I was doing, but that you're at a growth phase in your career and your life, and you want to build knowledge and experience and opportunity. So that goes to my third point of actively get uncomfortable. Put yourself in situations that you're not in your comfort zone, whether it's types of projects or using skills like having to talk to people or traveling or whatever it is that you're not that comfortable with. Actively seek it out and push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I say that for two reasons. One is you never know what you might actually like doing. I didn't choose to go and become a business development manager because I wanted to do that. That was more a response to a life challenge of I was, trying to find a job back in Tasmania in a small job market. But I really quite like it as a thing to do to help people understand stuff, and it leveraged a whole bunch of skills that I'd developed earlier in my career by putting myself into different situations where I had to help communicate and explain technical things. So that goes to my fourth point, which is really work on your understanding of what we might call the customer, or ultimately the community that uses the services that we provide. But customers could also be internal customers. That could be your boss, your manager, the people that use whatever, knowledge or skills or outputs that you create within a business. Really, really understand who you're working with and for in your roles. It will make you a better, whatever you are, engineer or whatever, but it will also, again, help you find opportunities and things that you do. Now, if you're doing those four things above, you're probably then hitting stuff of limits of your knowledge of going, oh, I don't know enough about what I'm doing. And that's why I encourage you to keep learning both formally. So I went back to uni. I've done multiple uni degrees now, but there's lots of different ways that you can learn, including throwing yourself into situations, but also, short start. Like there's lots of different ways of doing ongoing learning. The key thing is keep learning in a structured and unstructured way. And in terms of what you want to learn, make sure you keep your technical capabilities up, and we are in a rapidly evolving environment of technical knowledge. You still need to know some of the classics, but there's so much new stuff happening in the power sector that the need to keep learning technical is ever present. But absolutely, you have to build those non-technical skills. Some people call them soft skills. I would call them essential non-technical skills. And that might be communication skills. It might be understanding business and how something is viable and worth doing from an economic perspective. There's a whole range of things that you really want to build your knowledge of. In that spirit of learning and growing, I also urge you to really grow in yourself and think about where are some elements of my personality, my character, that through my life I want to grow. And is it something like your creativity or your resilience? We'll all have challenges in our life. Is it your ability to empathize and connect with people that are very, very different to you? Or, find out and think about what it is and make that part of your growth journey as well. And then the final thing I would say is that any path that you go on is a good path. There's so many different paths available, but have fun with it and make sure that you are thinking about what you want to do. It might be staying in the same role and doing the same thing for a very long time, that can be great, or it might be something like my path, which is really quite varied and different. But yeah, any path is good, and you're in a wonderful sector at a wonderful time to have a really rewarding and exciting and fun career So yeah, back to you, Ken.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, David. I do have a quick question, if you don't mind, just out of sort of my own curiosity. What was the biggest difference that you noticed when you started in your business development role, coming from the technical side of things? Was that a big? Was that a tough transition for you, coming out of the technical space into the people-facing space?
I think short answer would be yes. And I think I don't know how of the people that are with us, put your hand up if you're an engineer. Who's an engineer on the call? So we've got Dominic, Stefan, Anna. You're shaking your head, I see. Andrew. Yeah. So Andrew's an engineer. Great. Um, yeah, like I suppose what I found challenging was people work in such different ways. Yet
Yeah.
I'd spent a 4 or 5 years at university, and then I've been working in a sector where there's a very sort of strong foundation of logic and analysis and analytics to how people go about things. And then you're working with such different types of people who don't have that foundation and perhaps value other other types of elements in their interactions far more. So yeah, really having to rethink my interactions with people. And this is despite working in communities and doing stuff. So yeah, it was kind of a challenge to then try to be sharing knowledge and business, engaging in business development with such different people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. And when you find, and particularly, you've been speaking a lot about different skills and working in different places with different people. Have you noticed? And sorry, and this question is sort of specifically around working with people around in the executive level. Do you see that there is a change in ways of working when sort of executives these days in the power sector are working with other executives and sort of other people in the power sector? Has that changed from when you started your career?
I'll Yes and no. So I'm gonna share a slide. So firstly, I'll say that I'm embracing technology, and ChatGPT made this image for me. And what I find very ironic is the last item that it talks about is innovation and adaptability, and it chopped off the bottom of the image for no logical reason. Um, but so one of the sort of so I work with a lot of different executives across the power sector now, both technical, the engineers, but also non-technical engineers. So Renee Anderson, who was meant to be speaking here, Renee is the executive for people and stakeholders at Tas Network. So she's more of a people HR, human resources type person, not an engineer. But what I've got on the screen is really my perspective of here are some really common attributes of and behaviours of how executives in the power sector what they have to be doing today. To your point or your question, Cam, these
Mhm.
are not different to what they were throughout my career. So when I entered engineering as a grad in 1999, this is what people as execs would have been doing. But absolutely, what has shifted over that time is as an organization, when I look at things like electricity transmission and distribution organizations, um, they were doing, as execs were doing this the whole time. But now as an organization, they're doing it far more broadly. It's far more customer centric. So things like, rather than when I was a young person, electricity organization would say, we know that this suburb's going to grow. We're going to have to build extra transmission line. We're the experts. We'll make the decisions. We'll do it. Off we go. Right now, we're trying to build transmission lines again in Australia, and that approach fundamentally doesn't work. And there's absolutely a massive need, and the executives have to be much more aligned to thinking about how do we engage the local stakeholders, the landowners, the communities, the Indigenous and First Nation groups. How do we engage and get sort of stakeholder engagement and buy-in and support to provide the community with what we need. So the skills are not different, but how they're being applied and the focus is quite different. And what I'm seeing that's translating to in terms of who the executives are in the power sector and what their background is that there's a number of appointments that the people have had quite diverse careers. So, there's a lot of breadth, but we're sort of some of the things that I touched on of understanding lots of different jobs and roles and communities and very different skill sets over a career. I'm seeing a lot of execs with that sort of career background where they've experienced a lot so that they can then come in and bring that breadth to an organization, but they still need to be good at these sort of core skills of an executive as well. Yeah, but as I said, the foundations of these skills, you're all building them now and you'll build them as you move through your career, but having your eye on, am I good at strategic thinking? Am I good at communication and influence? It's different, but so looking at those things and building that skill set will be very rewarding for your career. So yeah, does that answer your question, Cam?
That hits the nail on the head for me. No, that's perfect. Moving on to my next question, and this is sort of more to do with your day-to-day life and how you work and how you, I suppose, how you put together all of your experience that you've gained over multiple different roles. But I'd love to know sort of some of the specific sort of day-to-day skills and strategies that you've picked up over your career. And I'd love to know about the ones that you're still using today as a CEO to help you manage an organization and manage us occasionally. But yeah, I just love to know what you picked up from your experience that has stuck with you to this day.
Yes. Well, aside from the other sort of the recommendations I put up about being curious and things like that, I suppose if I touched on, maybe there's three I'll touch on. One is an ability to properly listen. That's quite hard, as the age-old saying, you've got two of these and one of these, but it's quite human nature, I think, to want to use this more and to be, not really listening to someone that you're speaking with, but waiting for your chance to say your thing. I think really learning to put the brakes on that and to listen to someone and digest what they've said. For me, that's a lifelong challenge that I work on as a skill set. The second thing is being organized. We see it at every stage in our career. As uni students, you're juggling stuff. As early in your career, you're juggling stuff. It's and we're good at it, but it's hard as life gets more complex, and the technologies are always evolving, whether it's project management tools, but even like these days, there's probably, I don't know, 10 different channels by which someone might be messaging me about something these days. So your ability to juggle things is important. And as we're trained to some extent to do that as engineers, but I think it's a whole skill set that you need to work on yourself through your career. And so, so one would be listening, which is the other side of communicating, managing yourself, being organized in the right way for the situation. And I think the third thing is priorities, actually being able to work on the right priority rather than maybe the thing that's more interesting or a bit more in your comfort and strength zone, or it's a bit less daunting and scary. Being able to actually have the discipline to do the things that you should do versus the things that you would rather do for whatever reason, and that applies at every stage in my career, and it applies now. And so for me, building skills in those areas is an eternal journey. And one of those skills is the skill of discipline, which is also hard for humans to do, I think. So, yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, David. So now just to bring this all together, so bringing this back to how this can relate to our students. We've got a number of people on the call who are studying to be engineers today. You've gone through a lot of the skill stuff, but I was just wondering, do you have any other pieces of advice for students coming in, sort of starting their professional careers, coming into the power sector today?
No, not other than, I suppose, saying at the start. So one really simple piece of advice I would give you, which goes to what I just talked about, was be organised in your approach to looking for work. It always astounds me how people they seem to be quite reactive to finding. You've spent 3, 4, 5 years at university. You've really invested in yourself. You've got all these skills. Really do yourself the justice of thinking about, what do I want to do with this next stage in my career? It's not the rest of my life, but what do I want to do in terms of what are my passions, or what might I want to experience or develop a skill in, and do you see that as part of a longer term career direction? Like, I want to go into asset management, so I want to do X, Y, Z, but really, really sort of apply all of that knowledge and skill that you've developed through your studies, apply that to the project of the next stage in my career. And I'd recommend doing that at different stages in your career. You don't have to hyper plan the rest of your life, but a bit of, putting your rigor of getting data, analyzing data, making a plan and executing it. They're really valuable skills that can help you have a really satisfying and rewarding career. So as you're looking at, how can I apply for jobs? What am I looking for? When do those processes run? Who can help me? Like the API, like Engineers Australia, like others. Really, really put your skills to that stage, and then that will apply throughout your career as well. That would be my one final tip, Cam.
Brilliant. Okay, that's a wonderful takeaway and a great thing to end on there. So what I'll do is, if everyone just bears with me for one moment. All right, I'll bring the slider back up. So we're going to move into some Q&A now with David. We've got a few questions in the Slido, which is great. So I'll start by reading those out. If you've got any other questions, please put them in the Slido. After I'm done with the Slido, I'll jump. I will give everyone an opportunity to jump off mute and ask David some questions that way too. So, David, to get into the first question that I've got. So the first question is, did you ever find the changes in your career daunting? Was there something that you found grounding that helped you make the right choices? It's a great question.
To part one, short answer is yes. Like, yeah, I think it, absolutely it was daunting, but also it's exciting. And I think there's an element of, if you're not a bit daunted, you're not challenging yourself enough. And certainly as I've gone through life and my career, you get a bit more, you back yourself a bit more, because you put yourself in a challenging situation and the world doesn't end. And in fact, you realize, oh, I've got more experience, and I've got more adaptability, and I've got more resilience than I perhaps thought about. And so I've put myself in a different situation, and it's not gone badly. It's gone okay, or it's gone well. So I'm actually okay at new situations. And so, you can put yourself into more challenging situations. Also, the more you do different things, the better you're able to adapt, and the more knowledge you have to bringing to different situations. But yeah, it's always daunting, whether it's a new role with more responsibility, or it's a new role with a a very different skill set. Like you said, going into business development from being a technical engineer is quite a change in what you're good at and what defines your expertise. But yeah, it's something that we can do. And what was your second part of that question, Cam?
Um, was there something that you found grounding that helped you make the right choices?
Mm. I think so. The answer to that one part is what I just said. Of you kind of you get more comfortable with yourself because you're like, hey, you've done this before. You can deal with this. So that sort of grounds you. But the other thing that's guided me, and I say this every time I get a new type of job, I'm always mildly surprised that someone wants to pay me money to do it, and generally slightly more money than I was getting to pay the last time. Like I'm always genuinely a little bit like, oh, that wasn't expecting that. That's even better. It's because to your question, what's grounded me is I've done things that I'm passionate about, that I'm interested in, and that I believe in, that I want to be doing. And of course, like you're not like no one's paying me, but it's always sort of it's never front of mind. So by pursuing things that I'm interested in for whatever reason, um, that's that's sort of made me comfortable with what I'm doing because I'm inherently getting a sense of reward out of doing it, even if it is daunting to try. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Um, Lovely. Moving on now, I've got a question from Stefan. He says, his question is, sorry, you mentioned your experience in business development. Could you please give some insights on BDM/AM roles existing in the power industry as Stefan is transitioning from from software sales into becoming an engineer? Is
Mm,
there any more business development
yes.
roles you know of at this stage?
I will ask Stefan to clarify what he means by slash AM,
Yeah.
because AM makes me think asset manager, account manager might be what you mean, Stefan. Is um
Yeah.
so assuming that
Account
that
manager,
look,
Stefan's
there's
just said. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll give you a couple of examples off the top. So one is, let's say you're working within one of the network transmission and distribution organizations, and so they build transmission lines and they run all that stuff. But now that we've got this sort of quite unprecedented range of third parties putting up wind farms and solar farms or batteries and other types of infrastructure, they're now trying to connect into the transmission infrastructure, or they're say a data center running AI or whatever, also trying to connect in as a significant load. So within the transmission line businesses, there's now they're not doing business development, but they're account managers, and that they're actually managing relationships and managing processes with these external customers because the role of the networks is to serve the customers, and so there's account managers in that perspective. Then you could flip to a different type of role, which is in that, say, those those examples I gave of developers, they're trying to build solar farms or wind farms or batteries. They're also trying to win over either financial backers or win over stakeholders and landholders, or win over even a consortium to come together to develop things. And then I think the third sort of role of business development and client managers is maybe some of our members like GHD and Oricon as consultants, or Tyree and Wilson Transformers as manufacturers of equipment. They're trying to sell services or equipment to clients that are in that space. So they're not working at Sunglasses Hut selling sunnies to people. They're really selling quite technical services or equipment. So it requires a strong technical background, but it also requires that sales skill set, which is both communicating but also being able to manage a process that requires a lot of backwards and forwards of information. So, multiple different opportunities, I think, for someone that wants to work at that interface of service providers and customers in power. Yeah. And it can be very rewarding.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. Okay. So moving on to the next question, we've got two more questions, and they are, I will say, fantastic questions as well. So the next question that we've got is, how did you overcome the feeling of being an imposter or imposter syndrome when starting new roles with limited knowledge in new areas?
So I'll tell you so in the job I have now, so I'm the CEO of the API. That gives me even now, and it has always given me an element of imposter syndrome. Because on the one hand, so I'm the CEO of what at the time was one other person, right? So, and now I'm the CEO of a wonderful team of 6 people, including myself. So I go, well, compared to the CEO of Energy Queensland with almost 10,000 staff and an asset portfolio of, how many hundreds of billions of dollars, I'm not really the same type of CEO, right? But I still have, many of the same responsibilities. It's my role to build a team, to nurture a team, to make sure they're happy, to make sure that the business that they work for is viable and continues to be, successful in the years ahead. We don't become Kodak or Nokia and become irrelevant and we've all lost our jobs. So on the one hand, I can see that, hey, I've got a real role as a CEO and I embrace it. But it makes me sort of go, not a real CEO, even though I am. But when I was approached for the role, I was very clear, and this is my answer, I think, to the question is just to be honest with yourself and honest with other people around where you're at ready for things. So when I was approached by a recruiter to be the CEO of the API had been around for 15 years. The previous CEO was retiring and they were looking for someone and they found me. And I said to them very clearly at the time, I said, I'm not a CEO, I'm a general manager. I tick all the boxes that you want of engineer, power sector, has a PhD, can work with universities, can do business development, can build a team. I can do all those things, but I've never been a CEO and I don't have that experience of working with boards and, I don't have it, but I can get it. I can build it, I can grow. And that was a really healthy conversation where the chair and the recruiter said, yeah, we get that and we understand that and we expect you to grow and we'll support you to do that. So yeah, so just I suppose being honest with yourself of is it too much? It rarely is too much. You might go, oh, it's going to be hard and I'm going to have to paddle fast like the duck in the pond. I'm going to have to work really hard, but I can do it. And as long as you're clear and not being a tech sector fake it till you make it type, that's been my approach is be honest, but also work your ass off to get there. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Just one quick sort of follow-up question just from me, just out of curiosity. When you were first approached about the CEO role, did you ever think, just going back to the imposter question, did you ever think that it was a crazy question that you're being asked to be a CEO? Did you ever think you could not do the job, or did you look at the job description in depth and go, no, I can handle that?
Oh. In this situation, yes, I thought, because I'd done a lot and it was just, the API is a small organization and a lot of the things that it does was absolutely things that I had done before. So, and that was, I sort of describe it at times of my quite eclectic career was, not super useful for a lot of things. Like part of it would be, and then this role was like, hey, all of these things you've done, they all tick a box in some way. Now, that doesn't mean that there's lots of, not other jobs out there for me, but to your question, Cam, aside from going, hey, I'm not a CEO, I need to learn some specific things like, how to do an audit and report to ASIC and the federal regulator, and there's stuff I don't know, but otherwise I'm pretty comfortable that I could do this. Now, if you ask me to be the CEO of Energy Queensland or Powerlink, because Powerlink CEO has stepped down, I would very resoundingly say not a chance. I cannot do that job. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. All right. And one more question from the Slido. It is from Stefan again. So he is asking, based on your career experience and from your exposure collaborating with other teams, would you say, what would you say are the most vibrant and varied engineering roles in the power sector when it comes to variety, day-to-day variety and exciting work?
Oh, well, that's an impossible question because let's say you're working let's say you work for AEMO in the modelling team. You might be excited, as I would be, excited about doing the forecast models for what energy demand is going to look like in 5 years' time when a unknown number of batteries and solar panels and electric vehicles are in the grid. That might really float your boat, or it might make you just go, no thanks, I don't want to spend my life looking at Excel. You might be much more excited about the idea of going out and working in communities, about how can we help you be more sustainable and more inclusive and help, disadvantaged groups and low-income people and renters. How do we make sure everyone benefits from the career transition? Or you might be really interested in how do we manage the inclusion of all these different new technologies into the assets that are all around us in the streets. How do we include new stuff and make sure that we keep maintaining the system so it's safe and it sort of has a design life of 100 years? How do we keep it going? So it really depends on what excites you. But what I can say is that there's so much opportunity in the power sector at the moment and for the next 30 years that there is absolutely a role for you. The role probably exists now, but there's also an ever-changing number of new roles coming out, or variations of roles. Like, how do we use drones, running AI to do inspections of assets and turn that into a predictive maintenance regime? They're all combinations of things that have existed before, apart from the AI type thing. But, so there's lots of opportunities to also identify new roles and new ways of doing things in the sector as well. So, yeah, crazy exciting time.
There you go. Yeah, it certainly is a very exciting time. Lovely. Well, that's all the questions that we have from the Slido. Was there any other questions for David? Does anyone want to ask anything else at this stage?
I see Stefan is typing.
Stefan is typing. He is certainly typing. I'm very interested. I'm excited.
Maybe his finger's stuck down. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. No. All right.
Oh,
well,
maybe not. Okay. In that case, oh no, we do have a question. We have a question from the wonderful Anna. Anna, fire away.
Hey. Yeah, I was just wondering, what were like some of the most common channels that you found out about the jobs that became your next steps? Did you more commonly find out about them from the people you're around, or did you just decide Antarctica was it?
That's
good question. So a lot of those roles I asked about opportunities. So they weren't none of them were totally out of left field, right? But most of them were not a role that was sitting up on Seek and waiting to be filled. It was more this like, oh, we kind of have this problem, but we're not quite sure how to even like pitch how to do it, and we're also busy filling these other roles and these other more definable problems. So I had a job working part-time at the Antarctic Division, the Australian Antarctic Division, called Innovation Engineer, which they just invented because they're like, oh, your job working 2 days a week is to just, work on these kind of side problems that we have that we need someone to work on. So my point being, Anna, that sometimes going and talking to organisations and people about what you can do and what you're interested in can translate into role. And I'm seeing that in the power sector these days, particularly where we've got absolute clear role, senior network engineer. Most of the organisations have them on their websites. They're advertising on Seek and all of the types of jobs boards. You've got traditional graduate pathways like a graduate program, but there's also these little side problems where they're sort of like, oh, it'd be great if someone who had a background in data analytics and AI, but also knew about this and knew about working with Indigenous communities. If they came along, that would be awesome. So it's absolutely worth having chats with people about your passions and your capability. So
okay. That is brilliant. All righty. Was there any other questions for David? Preferably quick questions, just keeping an eye on the time. Anything else? Going once, going twice, and sold. Okay, we will keep on moving. So can I just get everyone to give David a very quick round of applause? Thank you so much, David. Wonderful speech. Wonderful presentation, pardon.